evening. Please be seated. As usual, our council meeting is being filmed. I'd like to welcome Chief Constable Sarah Thornton, who is going to give us a presentation later on tonight. And, of course, our newest councillor, Alison Swallow. You are free to say something if you'd like to.
I'd like to thank Madam Mayor for her kind words and warm welcome. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. I live at the heart of my ward, and having the chance to represent my neighbours, my community, the people I care about and I've been working with for the last 10 years is fantastic. I'm also thrilled to be joining a very strong United group, a Conservative group that has achieved so much. It's got an absolutely brilliant record of achievement. I just want to thank you all for your support. Thank you all.
Before I sign the minutes, does anyone have any questions? Councillor Blair, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Although not actually happened at the meeting, it's clear in the minute of item 40, anyone reading item 31 would think that all the declarations of interest were made at that point in the meeting, and I would therefore like an amendment to the minutes in item 31 to insert a sentence between the first paragraph about Tom McCann's declaration of interest and the second paragraph about Alistair Orty's declaration. The suggested wording is, the following declarations were made during agenda item 40. Just for accuracy, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Does anyone have any objections to this? All those in favour then, please. Thank you very much. Do we have any apologies, please?
We do, Madam Mayor. I have apologies from Councillor Orty, Councillor Barr, Councillor Guild, Councillor Haynes, Councillor Hayford-Taylor, Councillor Munro, Councillor Patman, Councillor Ray, Councillor Rowland, Councillor Slight and Councillor Paul.
Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest? Councillor Stanton?
I have a further apology. That's from Mike Corr, who's Good evening. I need to make a speech clearly. I'd like to add one more apology, please. That's for Councillor Mike Corr, who, as you know, is away unwell. He's just come out of hospital, but he cannot make it here tonight. So apologies to Mike.
Thank you very much.
Please, colleagues. Thank you.
Was there anybody else? Yes, Councillor Baker.
I'd like to declare a personal interest associated with item 47, the petition, as I'm due to become a trustee of the Relay Trust.
Just for clarification, you are not yet a trustee.
Not yet.
Anybody else? Yes, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a personal interest to declare. I'm a governor of the Forest and a member of the board of the Forest Academy Trust, and they are looking at getting a defibrillator at the moment. So I thought I'd just mention that. Also, there is an item, the last motion on the agenda is about parish precepts, and I would like to declare that I am a parish councillor of Winnersh Parish Council. I don't believe it is a pecuniary interest.
Thank you. Councillor
Thank you, Chair. I again have to do my standing declaration as Wokingham Town Centre regeneration will be on the agenda and up for discussion this evening, as one of my daughters actually works for the company doing the promotions with that. And my second declaration of interest for my other daughter, who was a special constable within the Wokingham area up until recently, who's just moved to Leicester now. Again, both are non-pecuniary, Chair.
I am also a school governor of Bearwood School, and I am a parish councillor as well. So.
Okay. Is there anyone who doesn't have any declaration?
Madam Mayor, could we have clarification from Andrew about, because there are quite a few parish dual-hatted members here, but there are also some governors of school. So rather than fall foul of the rules, could you please give us some guidance?
I understand there is need to declare an interest in that circumstance. Right, I thought I saw another hand over there. Or was that you didn't have a declaration of interest? Okay, right. Everybody happy? Public question time. I'd like to invite Mr. Hanna. Are you here? Yeah?
Thank you.
Please.
My question is for the Executive Member for Planning and Highways. Given all the additional housing in Embrook, Arborfield and Shinfield and the additional traffic that this will generate, can you please update me on the progress of the Winnersh Relief Road?
Madam Mayor, thank you, Mr. Hanna. The Winnersh Relief Road will be delivered as two projects. One of these between King Street Lane and the Lower Alleyway is an integral part of a planning application for the development on Hatch Farm Dairy site. The scheme has planning permission. Delivery of this section is therefore dependent upon the developer, and we are in discussions to try and accelerate the plans. The section of the Winnersh Relief Road between Wokingham Road and King Street Lane is being managed by the council. Preliminary work is being undertaken on the scheme with a view to progressing design to submit a planning application. We will complete the preliminary feasibility work soon and start work on the design for the scheme in the new year, with a proposal coming forward for planning permission sometime in 2016-17. Officers recently have met with local councillors to explain the changes being proposed for the traffic lights at Winnersh. We will continue to monitor this junction, and where we can make changes that are safe, bearing in mind there's been fatalities there in the past, and are likely to improve the traffic flow, we will endeavour to implement them. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary?
I understand that you've said that the designs will come for planning permission in 2016-17. So we're not likely to see any work starting within the next 3 years. Is that right?
Again, thank you very much for your question. Yes, you're right there. The only thing I would say to you is that we are working with local residents and also local councillors to see what we can do in the short term to improve that junction. But I said whatever we do must be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. David Hare, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to ask the Executive Member for Planning and Highways the question on the sheet in my name.
Thank you very much. I must just, before I go into the answer, I must say my predecessor did not actually counsel the fact that we were getting the data from the VAS. I mean, we are committed to road safety and work closely with the police to improve the safety of road users across the network. Where safety concerns are identified, we will investigate and report back to local members and residents. That will also include DEX. If speed is believed to be an issue, then the council utilises properly calibrated speed measuring loops. The data from these can be shared with those local members and residents. Inevitably, there's a cost to these investigations, and we need to spend the council's budget wisely. The cost associated with managing data from vehicle-activated signs did not represent good value for money, and the head of service made the decision to stop collecting it. To give you a bit of the background, some of the VAS units do not record numbers of activations, but the total number of vehicles passing and an estimate of the speed of the vehicles. The devices are not calibrated, and as such, the data is not always reliable. The council will be more than happy to help local NECs to set up a community speed watch programme that would allow them to use calibrated speed measuring devices, monitoring numbers of speeding drivers and then reporting them to the police. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary?
Mr. Kaz, I understand that you're saying that some of the information is not accurate and some of the information is too expensive to tell the public. But given the open, transparent and honest dealings the council purports to champion, why is it that the general public is not allowed much of this information?
Again, thank you, Madam Mayor. You will be allowed that information.
Thank you. Introduction of the day, please.
Good evening. Is there funding available to build the Northern Distribution Road in Wuntington without the 300 extra houses that were announced on the 21st of October at the North and South Wuntington SDL Forum?
Thank you, Nina, and Madam Mayor. It's hardly worth you sitting down. Developers' contributions will form a substantial part of the cost of the build in the North Woking Distributor Road, and these are being collected as developments come forward. In addition, the Council have already been successful in securing an indicative £24 million loan growth funding through the local economic partnership towards the distributor road. And some of this will be put towards the northern distributor road. We have yet to complete the work to determine the best route for the full northern distributor road, and as such, we cannot report an accurate cost for the construction. Whilst the delivery of the northern distributor road is not dependent upon the development at Keep Hatch Beach, which hasn't got planning permission currently, coming forward, the additional development could free up the money to make further improvements to the roads in the area. In addition to this is an opportunity to deliver the road a lot earlier, which will mean it will be a lot less inconvenience for the residents. And on top of that, there will be environmental issues such as a new bund, which would protect the noise. And as you probably know, the noise from the A329M, being a concrete motorway, is pretty poor, which will help existing residents. Thank you.
If so, then why have people come away from these meetings with the formed impressions that, from these forums, that the council has got enough money to fund these roads already?
If I could look inside that head, I could tell you.
Thank you very much. We are now going to listen to a presentation by the Chief Constable of Thames Valley Police, Sarah Thornton. And we also here tonight have Chief Inspector and Area Commander France. And you are very welcome as well, of course. Sorry for the meeting there.
Oh, don't worry.
So there we are. After the presentation, we have allocated 15 minutes for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much and good evening, everybody. I'm going to do a presentation which is largely about Thames Valley Police, but will cover issues of Woking in part. I'm going to start off with the review that we had with the Majesty's Inspector Constabulary in July this year, which was a comment on how the force had been dealing with significant savings so far in the spending review period. We have taken nearly £59 million out of the budget. But what HMRC was noting is that we've done that with a considerably smaller reduction in police officers than most other forces. In fact, I'll show you a chart in a minute that we have increased the number of officers on the front line. The bottom paragraphs are also important in as much as we've done this at a time where we've also been reducing crime from what are quite low levels, and as you know, Woking in particular has always had very low levels of crime, and our victim satisfaction is very high. The numbers in that report are on the chart here, and it just shows you the comparison between the average for England and Wales and Thames Valley. We remain a cheap force in terms of police officer costs per head of population. Our reductions in crime at 25%, significantly more than other force areas. Our victim satisfaction, 88.5%, again higher than the average for England and Wales. The important one, I think, is this next one, are planned changes, or in fact the changes that have taken place in numbers of officers, only 2% down compared to the national average of 11%. And I would argue that in fact the work we have done to make cuts and efficiencies everywhere other than in officer numbers is one of the reasons why the performance in terms of satisfaction and crime reduction has remained pretty strong. We have a delivery plan, and I'm going to go through this delivery plan and explain some of the things that we're doing under these 6 objectives. This delivery plan is very much based on the Police and Crime Plan, which is published by the Police and Crime Commissioner, and he gives his apologies for being unable to be here tonight. Starting with the first objective, cutting crime. It's quite a controversial issue at the moment in policing about whether we should have targets. The Police and Crime Commissioner set us 5 targets this year, basically saying, can we have, I want you to have lower levels of violence this year compared to last year, and lower levels of burglary. And in terms of solving crimes, I want you to solve 52% of violent crimes, 20% of burglary dwellings, and 23% of rape offences. And what I put in this chart, this is the performance until 18th of November for both Wokingham Borough and Thames Valley. And you'll see in that first column, the force as a whole, violence is up this year compared to last year, and it's up in the borough. I met with Rob France this afternoon and talking about what's happening there. It does mean that this year to date you have had 100 more violent crimes than you had last year. But I repeat, they are very low. The violent crimes in Wokingham are the lowest in any area in Thames Valley, and the lowest per head of population. The lowest in numerical terms and percentage terms, and you're the second lowest in your kind of national family. But it is a concern. A lot of it is around the nighttime economy. It's not necessarily violence between people that know each other. And I know that Rob and the team are doing a lot of work trying to focus on those particular areas, those particular premises which are causing those levels of violence. On burglary, the news is very good in Wokingham down nearly 25% again this year, and the force as a whole nearly 20%. And that's on a 20% reduction last year. The numbers of burglaries right across the force, and to be fair across the country, are significantly down, which is really encouraging. In terms of outcome rates, that's how many crimes we're solving. Again, the violence, the target is 52%. I think by the end of the year we'll be nearly there. But we're at the moment in the force and we're working solving nearly half of all violent crime. And as you can see, burglary dwelling, we're comfortably over target in Wokingham. So the team here are solving about a quarter of all burglaries, which compares very, very favourably with national targets. And then on rape, force is hitting the target. Wokingham is slightly under, but actually the numbers are so low in terms of those sorts of sexual offences. It will just take a couple more to be solved, and Rob and the team will have hit that target quite easily. So generally, we are working hard to try and hold the line on violence, but generally an encouraging picture. Although that said, crime went up slightly in Wokingham last year. This is all crime in the area, and you're about 5,000 crime mark. But again, if you work out for your population, which is quite large actually, per head of population, again, the point is this is very, very low levels of crime comparatively. Our second objective is about the visible presence. One of the things we've done quite deliberately, because of the pressure on budgets, is deliberately increase the number of special constables that we have on the force, at 645 currently, and they this year contributed over 140,000 hours. That's all volunteers, they just kept paid their expenses. They won, our road policing team won the regional award, and they're very much involved with policing the nighttime economy, but also working in rural areas, helping our rural crime initiatives. And the last bullet point just refers to the fact that one of the things we've been trying to do is not just increase the numbers of specials, but increase the numbers who are qualified to patrol on their own, so they don't have to be accompanied. And clearly, if they can patrol on their own, then we get more out of them and they're more effective. The other thing that we've been doing, I just wanted to share the issue of dealing with mental health issues and ask for your help really on this. The issue of police getting involved in people having mental health crises is a significant one, and the amount of times we're getting drawn in is increasing. So of what we call our fearful welfare calls, 41% of them about mental health issues last year. So it's a significant issue for operational officers. We have a power under Section 136 of the Mental Health Act, which enables a police officer to take someone to a place of safety if they're having a crisis in a public place. And so last year, over 1,200 people detained as a place of safety. It's a significant amount of work. The problem with it is that while the legislation is there for good reason, if somebody's mentally ill, probably the last place you want to be taken to them is a police station. And arguably, the last people who should be dealing with people who are ill are police officers who are not qualified or expert in that way. So what we've been doing in Oxfordshire, we've had a pilot of a triage system, which basically means that from 2 p.m. until the small hours of the morning, we have 2 mental health nurses who work with our police officers and help them to assess cases. And that has led to a significant reduction in number of detentions, which is the bottom bullet point. We've managed to reduce to 2% across the force, but in Oxfordshire actually by nearly a third. But the most important thing is that the number of people who are then, once they've been detained, who are being taken to a police station is at the lowest it's ever been. And I'll just put the numbers on that chart. Actually, less than 10% are now taken to police cells. And the reason why I said I could do with your help is that in terms of the work that your Health and Wellbeing Board do, and you know, thinking about this with health partners, there is no similar provision for triaging in working at the moment. We are talking to various people in Berkshire, but if this ever comes up in those meetings talking to health, actually this is a much better way to deal with people and to help people who are mentally ill. And we would say that actually the experience in Oxfordshire is that it works very effectively. And what's interesting, we had a conference about 3 or 4 months ago, and somebody who had been ill, and the mother of somebody who had been ill, came and spoke about their stories and just how much better they felt they'd been dealt with when they were being dealt with by qualified people rather than unqualified police officers. Our third objective is about protecting communities from the most serious harm, and I've just got a few examples of this. The issue of child sexual exploitation is, I know, familiar to you all. It is a considerable issue in the Thames Valley. We had the big case at the Old Bailey last year, the Oxford case. We've got another case coming up at the Old Bailey next year from Aylesbury. We currently have 16 investigations across the course. These aren't just small investigations, they're significant investigations. I'm afraid it's one of these things that we found once we start sharing information with particularly children's social care, but also health colleagues, then there are more cases revealed, and as I say, we've got 16 live investigations. Despite all the cuts in our resources, we have prioritised this area of work. We've put more resources, more people into child abuse investigation over the last few years. We've put more staff into multi-agency safeguarding clubs and more staff into dealing with sexual exploitation directly. We've done that for the last 2 years. We're going to be doing it again next year. So we've had to kind of cut elsewhere to reflect the absolute priority of this. Best example of the partnership work on CSE is the Kingfisher unit, which we have in Oxfordshire. A really good example of joint work. It was set up a couple of years ago now, and we have health partners, county council partners, and ourselves working side by side, dealing with that, sharing information, sharing intelligence, and trying to get in early to prevent this awful harm. The other issue that we've been working on is the multi-agency safeguarding hubs. We are now up and running in Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire and Milton Keynes, which are probably easier because they're county, to Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire. In Berkshire, we are working with colleagues in Reading and Slough to establish hubs for next year, probably halfway through next year. In terms of working on what we will be doing is giving you an enhanced service through the referral centre. But I know that work is ongoing, and you're having information sharing meetings, I think, is it three times a week now, so there's got to be more joint working. The solution to these things is early exchange of pieces of the jigsaw so that we can work together to combat this. The second serious harm I want to talk about is organised crime. We believe there are just under 70 organised crime groups currently operating in the Thames Valley, and for each one of those there will be some sort of plan to tackle them. It might be full investigation, it might just be about neighbouring officers keeping an eye on them and disrupting them. It is a key issue for us as crime has become more international, assisted by globalisation, technology, easy travel. The issue about organised crime and its international aspect has become a bigger issue for us all the time. And of course, cybercrime, part of that, and sometimes linked to that. And we now have a regional cybercrime unit. But actually, the challenge for us in terms of cybercrime, particularly cyber-enabled crime, is to make sure that all our detectives have some skills, and we have been developing new courses to try and train people up. I've just put an example here of an operation, which is one which our organised crime unit dealt with. You might think that road traders are an odd thing for an organised crime unit to deal with, but absolutely not odd when you see the sorts of harm and damage these people cause and tricking old people out of significant amounts of money. Now, actually, on these cases, this particular group, there was work done. But you know, people paying six-figure numbers for a bit of roof work, just absolutely phenomenal, the way that they had conned old folk out of money. 3 have been charged with fraud, 2 on bail and 1 in custody. So I make no apology for using quite sophisticated covert policing to try and catch these people, because they do make people's lives a misery. The third example of protection from harm is the work we do with yourselves in major emergencies, civil emergencies such as the flooding in January and February last year. We were running our Gold Command 24 hours a day for about 10 days from Kidlington and linking in with the Cabinet Office briefing room nationally on a daily basis. We also work locally with your Emergency Operations Centre, and in West Berkshire and Windsor Maidenhead we had our own Silver Command as well. So, really good examples of multi-agency work. And I know my people on the ground work with your emergency planning people to make sure when these things happen, the response is joined up and effective. The fourth objective is about communication and the use of technology. If we're going to have fewer officers and staff, we need to make sure that we employ every possible way to communicate with the public, but also to make sure that our officers are equipped to be more capable because they've got more technology at their fingertips. So lots of use of social media. The figures of people on the various systems in Thames Valley are listed there. If you're not on Thames Valley Alert, it's worth going onto a website and registering. That will give you information about crimes and issues in your area, and we find that really quite useful. But we're using social media more and more to get messages out, and also more importantly, if anything big happens, we then get a report back. We look at what are the comments on social media. There's good feedback for us in terms of positive and negative comments from the public. And then talking about technology, just some examples of what we've been doing last year. We've changed our crime and intelligence system this year, which is a key system, which is a massive piece of work. It's gone reasonably smoothly, and that enables, particularly because it's crime and intelligence together. In the old days, we had 2 separate systems, and we had to double key entry everything. And now it's just one system, much better. We have a joint service network with our colleagues in Hampshire, Surrey and Sussex. That's cheaper because we procure together, but also actually enables us better sharing because we're all on the same network. Body-worn video cameras, nearly 360 across the force. They are a good bit of kit. The officers like them, particularly for dealing with violence, whether that's domestic violence or nighttime crime. Put the camera on, and the camera on the whole doesn't lie, and so it's really useful evidence for us. We are piloting officers giving evidence remotely, so in one of our stations we've got the cameras, and it's run right through to the court. It'll be interesting to see whether that's going to be cost effective, but the idea is not to stay in the station, catching up on work in the station, rather than hanging around court all day. The bottom thing is the biggest challenge, because of course mobile data has got to be the answer. We did a lot of work with batteries over the years. They're not suitable for operational officers really. We are piloting some tough books, we're piloting using tablets, we're piloting Windows 8 phones, a variety of different initiatives to try and ensure that officers are not as tied to police stations, they can be out and about for much longer. Our fifth objective is about increasing professionalisation. The one thing I wanted to talk about in this is the new Code of Ethics, which was published nationally in July and made a statutory code of practice at that point. The issue about public confidence in policing is one we take very seriously. National issues, and some of them from very many years ago, dominating the media. And so we know, in terms of securing and maintaining the confidence of the public, it's something we need to do constantly, that the public rightly expects the highest standards of police officers, and probably higher than they apply to themselves. So the Code of Ethics is part of it. We've been doing a lot of work in force to think about, and to encourage our officers to think about, what does it mean to be making ethical decisions? What does it mean to be a trustworthy leader? What does it mean to have ethics at the heart of what you're doing? So a lot of work ongoing on that, and I think it's really important. And lastly, the money. Like your budget, our budget is made up of government grant and precept, about 65% government grant, 35% precept. And this is what's happened to our government grant over the last spending review period. Very similar to yourselves, I'm sure. 14% down in cash terms, but of course in real terms that's well over 20%. So what we've been coping with is making those savings, and I've always said it's got to be about cutting the budget, but not about cutting the service, and that's the challenge, and senior officers and managers work very hard to make sure that's the case. And so what we've done over the last 4 years is take just under £59 million out of the revenue budget. The revenue budget is £380 million, so quite a significant amount of saving. They're just the headings under which we have done it. I'll just pick out two. What I call value for money. That's where we have looked at all our non-staff costs and taken most money out of those. So whether that's contracts or buildings or fleet, or fuel, or overtime, that's where we focus on trying to take as much money. And we need to do more of that because it does, to a certain extent, protect the service if we can take money out of there. And the other one, as I mentioned, collaboration. We are collaborating quite extensively with our colleagues, particularly in Hampshire. I think that in 3 or 4 years' time, we'll find many more functions and collaborative functions. It's hard work. There are management overheads in working with another force that's proud of its tradition, and we're proud of our tradition, but actually it makes a huge amount of sense because we can preserve service levels, but save money. And what it means is that over this period, these are bar charts showing how many officers and PCSOs we've been recruiting. We're not growing this time, we have to recruit that sort of level to keep up. What it does show is, unlike most other forces, we've managed to keep recruiting through the holding period, which actually is also good for morale because it means that promotions have continued to go through those years, so people feel that they can invest in their career and develop and go on. And this is the illustration of what it means that we have protected frontline. This is all the police forces in England and Wales and what's happening to their frontline numbers over the period, before the period, and with that little green stick on the right-hand side because we're one of only a handful of forces where actually the numbers in frontline have increased slightly over the period. And as I say, that's been quite a deliberate strategy. The problem we have, however, is the next 3 years, and if the Police and Crime Commissioner were here, he would voice this very strongly. I presented this medium-term financial plan in some detail to him at a public meeting last week. What I presented to him, if you look down 15-16, I have balanced the budget for the next financial year by taking out £12.7 million of further savings. And I know where all those savings will come from, and I'm confident we can deliver them. What I didn't do, and it's the first time I've ever not done this, is that I then in years 2 and 3, I have not balanced the budget at this stage, so you can see a funding gap of 10.6 and 10.4. The reason why I haven't balanced the budget at this stage is because I don't know where those savings are going to come from. We're doing a lot of work to try and work out where they're going to come from, but at this stage I can't say. It is going to be really tough. I've identified 8.3 and 3, but it's that further 21, 22 million pounds worth of savings. It's very, very tough from 2016 onwards. And whatever happens in terms of the general election, I think that won't change very much. So the difficulty for us, and I did some media interviews last week, is that I'm confident that for the next financial year, we can protect the number of officers, particularly that are doing patrol work and neighbourhood policing teams, which are the ones probably you're most concerned about. It might be very difficult to do that after 2016 because the savings are running out. Because every £1 million is about 20 police officer posts, and I'm running out of other places to identify and find those savings. So quite a bleak picture going forward, but it's balanced for next year and no cuts to the front line next year. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. I think that deserves some applause, don't you? David Chopping, you have a question.
I thought they'd all been submitted by the Mayor to the Chief Constable in advance.
There's a list.
Madam Mayor,
I've certainly got the question.
sorry. May I make a suggestion, Madam Mayor? Because this is being filmed, if we don't read the questions out, people won't know what's going on.
I have questions for you. I am being aided, madam. It was something that was prompted by Radio 4 a few weeks ago. And it says that we've heard that on the news lately about the various ways that other European countries deal with drug abuse and handle the dealers. The latest report from the Home Office would indicate it is worth considering a different approach than the hardline attitudes of present policy. I'm not in favour of decriminalisation personally, but would welcome any information you can provide as to how matters to reduce drug usage are progressing in the Thames Valley generally, and WBC in particular.
The reality is actually that drug use amongst young people is lower now than it's been for many years, and there's a lot of evidence and research that suggests that. The concern, of course, is still that it's too much, but also for the concept of legal highs, where there are substances which are not illegal necessarily, but have a very significant impact on young people and are very harmful. In Thames Valley, our approach to drugs is twofold, really. It is about focusing on the organised crime aspects, as I was talking about before, about those people who are making vast profits and drug trafficking across international borders very often, and then certainly supplying in the Thames Valley. And one of the things we've found is that sometimes drug dealers from London quite like coming out west because there's less competition amongst the dealers. It's getting quite tricky because there's quite a few on the same patch in London. To come out here is sometimes attractive. So we do, in terms of our serious organised crime, focus on those people who are making significant amounts of money. But in terms of the other aspect to our strategy, it's very much about working in partnership on the prevention and treatment side. So within your own borough, the work around the drug action team. We've been doing some work with the drug action team, particularly in terms of the use of MCAT, which is a real concern at the moment, and more of the drug workers have been trained in that. But in fact, your drug problem in this borough is really low. The figures for last year are that you have 3.5 either cocaine or heroin users per 1,000 population. The national average is 8.6, so you've got very low levels. But the focus basically across the force is on targeting those who are making a lot of money from dealing and supply, but also working in partnership on the health side of it and trying to give people help to stop use.
Thank you for that. Councillor McCann, please.
Thank you. The Prime Minister said it is illegal for pubs and clubs and others to sell alcohol to any person who is intoxicated. Have the Thames Valley Police in the past 5 years ever issued any warnings, cautions to any landlords, publicans, clubs or owners within Wokingham Borough Council for selling alcohol to persons who is or may be intoxicated? If yes, who and when? If not, why not?
Well, the Prime Minister is absolutely correct. It isn't the sentence itself, doesn't mean he's intoxicated. The issue for us, of course, is how you gather evidence at the time. I mean, clearly, in the old days, when I was a constable, you might sometimes put plainclothes officers into pubs. We just haven't got the resources to do that now, so it is difficult to catch people in the act. We've had a look at our figures. We don't force wide. We do. Force-wise, we don't have an easy record of cautions or warnings, so I can't tell the answer to that. The only record I've got is of fixed penalty notices, and 9 were issued in the last year across the force, but none of those in Woking. If we hear that this is going on, what we will tend to do is calling the licensee. And the case in your area where that has been an issue was the spin bar, because we were noting a lot of people were being ejected from that club heavily intoxicated. Therefore, our assumption is we don't know that they were buying the drinks. Somebody might be buying them for them, but our assumption is on some occasions that would be the case. We called in the management team and read the riot act to them, so we did focus on it. So if any of you have particular concerns about particular premises where that's an issue and people are raising it, then please let us know. We still have dedicated licensing officers, and that's absolutely their job to deal with it. On the whole, our approach is let's try and work in partnership to prevent it and warn people, but actually if that doesn't solve the problem, then we're quite happy to prosecute.
But you haven't done anything yet?
Well, we've not prosecuted anybody in the Thames Valley, but I can't tell you about cautions and warnings because we don't hold that information centrally.
Right, thank you very much for that. Councillor Murphy, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, Chief Constable, I would like to thank Lord France and his team for supporting the Wokingham Town Council over the last 12 months, once again, with the civic and public events that they've had, and they've been really an excellent support for us, and particularly the problems we've had with vandalism with our gardens recently. However, I do have two questions, despite that. And it seems annually I ask the same questions, which get seemingly positive responses from you and your team, yet find hardly any evidence during the year that anything positive has happened. Can I then ask again when we can reasonably expect to see any positive anti-speeding work from the police on the Spine Road at Moose Hill? And also, myself and other residents have asked on a number of occasions if we can assist by being trained to use the speed guns or any other speed deterrent. And we've been told we'll be contacted, again waiting for follow-up. Can I also ask on behalf of the Embrook residents when the police will be putting speed traps in place on Old Forest Road between the single-track railway bridge and Tapley Depot? I asked this again last year, but residents are still concerned at the high speeds of vehicles on this road without any overt evidence of anything having been done to catch the parties. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your kind comments about the work of Rob's team. In terms of Spine Road, we do enforcement there about every 6 weeks. Because when we went to Spine Road and did the surveys, there is a problem with speeding there, so it's been prioritised by the local neighbourhood team, and that's done about every 6 weeks. In terms of the issue about you being trained to use speed guns, members of the public can be trained to use the speed identification devices, but not to do the speed guns, but you could certainly come along. And I said to Rob earlier on, can the inspector make sure that the councillor is invited to go along when they're doing it, one of these 6-week things, to prove to him that they do it because it's been prioritised. So you'd be more than welcome, and the inspector will be in contact with you to invite you along. In terms of Forest Road, we did go up there with the speed indication devices, and it doesn't appear that there's a problem with speeding that can be therefore escalated to enforcement yet. So we had a look at it. We will continue to look at it. We last looked at it about 4 months ago. We will keep it under review. But at the moment, when we go there with indication devices, there doesn't seem to be a speeding problem.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ferris, please.
Thank you. Good evening. Is it true that Twynford Police Station is to close in 2017?
The plan is that we're going to replace Twynford Police Station, not close it. And by that I mean our preference is that we would like to join with other partners in the scheme to have a community centre. And I know certainly it's something the Home Secretary has been engaged and would like us to be involved in that if at all possible. If that doesn't work out, then we are quite clear that we need some sort of neighbourhood policing base and some sort of front counter where the public can come and get services. So it's about that particular building being replaced, but there's no suggestion that we won't have anything in Twynford.
Councillor Lee, please.
Thank you very much, Chief Constable. We heard earlier on that you're working very closely with Oxford, Reading and Slough. If I could just slightly rephrase my question, if you had a magic wand and could get rid of any bureaucratic problems, what can we do to more effectively work better with you to limit any potential for child abuse in this area?
Absolutely.
The answer has got to be about joint working, about, particularly if we're talking about prevention, key to prevention is the sharing of information and intelligence, and my colleagues working closely with your children's social care colleagues, but also with colleagues in health and schools, etc. Those are the best models. In terms of Wokingham, we are going to be giving a kind of enhanced service to our referral centre. But the difficulty we have in Berkshire, to be perfectly honest, is splitting our resources 6 ways. And therein lies the difficulty. So if I had a magic wand, I'd try and solve that problem somehow. We are committed to, as I say, giving an enhanced service through those referral centres, and there are more meetings, and I think that there will be kind of more opportunities to share information. I suspect that this problem might well be eased if we can solve that mobile technology problem, so that we might have some of our people, if they can work, you know, very effectively in Reading for 3 days and Wokingham for 2, when they've got well supported by good technology, that might be the solution. So structurally, it's much harder in Berkshire, and I think technology might be the answer. But it's not a dispiriting picture. There is more and more joint work going on. And as every report that's published nationally shows, the only way to deal with this is to work closely with each other. And frankly, the public, I think, will be running out of patience if we don't.
Councillor Norman Jurgensen.
Many residents and councillors are concerned about parking issues in the borough. Did Thames Valley Police consider this to be a significant issue, and what are you doing to address it?
Wokingham Borough Council is one of the few areas in the Thames Valley where parking hasn't been decriminalised. We do still have responsibility there for enforcement, but being realistic, with all the other demands, it's not a top priority. We prioritise parking issues around schools, and we prioritise parking issues where there's particular public concern or council concern. But being realistic, there's not a lot of resource to do this. My suggestion, and I know it's a political hot potato here, so I probably shouldn't say this, but my recommendation to you would be to consider decriminalisation, which is the approach of most councils in the Thames Valley. If you looked at a map of the country, it dominates the approach across the country, and certainly about 2 years ago, I had a letter from one of the ministers in the Department of Transport saying I should do what I could to try and encourage you all to put your toes in the water. And I think at that time I did write to the leader or the chief executive saying that this is what we've been asked to do. So I think probably that's the solution. Different councils have different views about whether that ends up being a cost to you or whether you can cover your costs. But I think certainly some councils, certainly the view that you can cover your costs through the process.
Councillor Pittard, please.
Thank you, Lady Mayor. Chief Constable, given the increased desire for cycling, the general lack of designated cycle paths and danger on the roads, will Thames Valley Police reissue the statement made a few years back stating that Thames Valley Police will not prosecute cyclists using footways, stroke paths beyond the immediate busy pedestrian areas of town centres, provided that they act courteously towards pedestrians?
What's your response?
We can't find any record of somebody declaring that amnesty in Wokingham. But I think what Rob and I are agreeing that we take a pretty sensible approach to this. By the way, I also get letters complaining about people cycling the pavement. We check the records, and I think we find one ticket issued for this offence. The issue, of course, is about dangerous and inconsiderate cycling. So I think it's about common sense. So I don't think we can declare an amnesty, but I think on the whole, the officers are very sensible about the issue. The biggest issue that I've got to say at the moment, I think, is cycles and lights, or lack of lights. I notice it all the time in Oxford where I live.
Councillor Horton, please.
Thank you. Will the arrangements for multi-agency service hubs in Berkshire have any implications for Wokingham Borough?
I hope I've, in general, dealt with this. The plan is to have the referral centres providing enhanced service. It won't reduce it at all. I think the chief executive knows the discussions, has been very involved in discussions. I mean, I had thought, or maybe even hoped at one point, that we could somehow have a joint safeguarding hub. But I do understand from your point of view, your own children's social care, that would mean undoing a lot of your processes, and that would be very tricky to do. So what you're going to have is an enhanced service from the referral centre. As I said earlier on, I think the answer is more joint meetings, more technology, so we can really work together.
Thank you. I'm afraid the time is now up, and I'd like to thank the Chief Constable for coming here tonight. It is very important to us that you do come and update us on a regular basis, so we hope it's not going to be too long before we see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now would like to welcome Jenny Bennett, the Social Behaviour and Family First Manager.
Good evening. As you may be aware, there are a number of new antisocial behaviour powers contained in the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act, some of which replace and are similar to previous antisocial behaviour legislation. Included in the new powers is the community trigger, which may be of interest to you, and I would like to provide you with an overview of how the process for this power will work. The community trigger can be initiated when a customer is not satisfied with the response they have received to an antisocial behaviour complaint, and providing they meet the required threshold, they may request a review of their case. The request can be made either by the victim or on their behalf with their consent. When a trigger is requested, the case is fully reviewed by a panel with an independent chair to see what action has previously been taken in response to the victim's report of antisocial behaviour. After the panel's consideration, it may make recommendations to other agencies. Any relevant actions arising as a result of that review will be recommended to be undertaken by the relevant agency and subsequently reported back to both the customer and the panel. Although the relevant agency is not obliged to carry out the recommendations of the panel, the legislation places a duty on a person who carries out public functions to have regard to those recommendations, which may be challenged by the panel if they choose not to carry them out without good reason. If a case is currently already open to any agency and there are outstanding actions that are ongoing in relation to that case, then the trigger will not reach the threshold and cannot be activated until after all of these have been completed. Not all triggers will necessarily meet the threshold, and this power is not intended to be confused with the formal complaint process, which should be managed through the usual procedures. If a victim is not satisfied with the way an application for a trigger or a review has been carried out, an application can be made for the process to be reviewed, either by the Chief Executive of the Council or by the Thames Valley Police Area Commander. The agreed threshold for the community trigger is where an application for an antisocial behaviour case review is made and there have been at least 3 reports from one person within a 6-month period, or 5 reports from different people within a 6-month period. These can be made either to the local council, the police, registered social landlords, or clinical commissioning groups. Individuals have up to 1 month to report each single incident, and 6 months to activate the trigger after the 3rd incident report. The trigger could therefore be initiated up to 13 months after the first incident occurred. In addition, there are other considerations that will be taken into account when considering whether or not the threshold has been met. That is, no one contacted the complainant to advise what action would be taken, reported problems have not been appropriately investigated, victims' vulnerability and or potential for harm have not been considered, and this has affected potential service delivery. This will be assessed using the Thames Valley Police Antisocial Behaviour Risk Assessment Matrix. And finally, no action has been taken because information has not been shared between partners and this has affected potential service delivery. I have provided leaflets this evening containing contact details for initiating the community trigger and which can be passed to victims of antisocial behaviour for their information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jenny Bennett is happy to answer any questions outside the meeting. So if you would like to contact her, that is fine. Do we have Mark Hall here? I understand you have a petition. Please go ahead.
Madam Mayor, this petition requests that no significant increase in traffic in Honey Hill, Wokingham Without results from the development south of Wokingham and around Crowthorne. Any increase in traffic is inappropriate because an existing settlement of 14 houses and a public house is located at the north end of a very narrow road with poor drainage and dangerous deep ditches. It's frequently used by cyclists and horse riders. There are no pavements and there are several sharp bends, yet most of the road is subject to a national speed limit of 60 miles an hour. The exit onto the 9 Mile Ride is difficult as it is too close to a roundabout, and a number of accidents have occurred here. The residents request improvements to the capacity of Heathlands Road 9 Mile Ride junction. Traffic flows in Honey Hill should be monitored every 6 months, and speed limits are reviewed and more appropriate limits putting in place in conjunction with traffic calming measures. This petition is signed by 94 residents, pub users and businesses in Honey Hill, and we request funding from your Section 106 and seal money for developments.
Thank you very much. Would you like to hand your petition to Anne Hunter? Thank you for coming. I'd now like to invite Claire Page and Rory Davis to present their petition.
Good evening. After the recent tragic death of my 5-year-old daughter Lily May in May earlier this year, it has been brought to my attention the amount of cardiac arrests that happen in schools and the lack of defibrillators that are fitted in schools. Lily May died from sudden arrhythmia death syndrome. Arrhythmias can be undetected and can cause a sudden cardiac arrest at any age and at any time. Some of these are actually brought on by exercise and heat. The fitting of defibrillators in all schools and eventually every public place is something that could save your child. There are 270 cardiac arrests in UK schools each year. The current chance of surviving a sudden cardiac arrest in the UK is only 6%, but immediate access to a defibrillator can raise this chance to 74%. I therefore believe strongly that defibrillators should be encouraged in all schools. This should be a piece of compulsory health and safety equipment fitted in all schools where children spend a large part of their everyday lives. I would like to now hand you over to Rory Davis, the AED Awareness Officer. Thank you.
Good evening, thank you. I'd like to share some statistics from my career of 20 years in the emergency services. I've done over 1,000 resuscitations, so gone after 1,000 dead people in effect, and I've only saved one person that's actually walked out of hospital. They do allow me back on the ambulances now, but the main reason for that is because of the time period from collapse to when that emergency service arrives. So according to statistics in the South Central Ambulance Service, we should be meeting A category calls, which is unconscious, not breathing calls, within 8 minutes. In Lily May's case, the ambulance service arrived within 9.5 minutes. I was present to put the defibrillator on Lily May, and she wasn't in a shockable rhythm. We've got about 10 minutes, you and I have got about 10 minutes to do something with the rhythm that somebody goes into after cardiac arrest. After about 10 minutes, if nothing is done with regards to changing that rhythm, it can lead to certain death. Statistically, if we look at every minute that goes by while someone is in cardiac arrest, they lose 10% chance of survival. Look at Fabrice Mwambu, who was defibrillated within 2 or 3 minutes on the football pitch after dying on the field for no apparent reason. It was his heart. 3 minutes, 70% chance of survival. He's walking around today. Lily May, 9.5 minutes, 5% chance of survival. And that's why we're here today, to perhaps ask, not the question, how are we going to get defibrillators out there, but when. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who would like to speak to this? Keep your hands up. Right. Councillor Grandson, would you like to start?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Claire, for bringing this petition. I this is an area that's very close to my own heart. My mother has just retired as senior cardiologist at Portsmouth NHS Trust after 42 years, 37 of them working in cardiology, so I know from first-hand experience how difficult this can be, as I have seen many people suffer from this. In fact, this continues as my cousin is also now a qualified cardiologist, and I spoke at them both at length on this petition, and that's why I've stood up to speak, as I will fully support it. I've always supported the British Heart Foundation, and there is another charity that my mother works with very closely and supports, which is especially key, and which you probably know, and that is CRY, which is cardiac risk in the young. And this goes slightly beyond what this petition is asking for, but it's key in understanding this. Every week there are 12 deaths from young sudden cardiac death, white SCDs. That's around 624 a year, within a wide range of ages, from infants to young adults at university. You mentioned Fabrice Muamba, who suffered his famous heart attack in the Bolton versus Tottenham Hotspur game in 2012. And he survived thanks to the excellent medical facilities, including the defibrillator on site, and also a off-duty cardiologist who is actually a rather good friend of my mother's, it so happens to turn out, as they trained together 30 odd years ago. Fabrice and I are exactly the same age, give or take a month. And that is why this is such important, and sadly not everyone is as lucky. We had the case of Melissa Smith, 15, who died playing football only a few months ago due to an undiagnosed heart condition. My mother herself has got an undiagnosed heart murmur, which was not discovered until she started work at the hospital at 18. So everyone has done it. I'm pleased to say that screening has increased since Muamba, and it is something that needs to be increased more. It's also quite interesting because I read a report just yesterday of a Dutch student who's actually developed a defibrillator that fits inside a drone, so it can be flown to a specific target within a few minutes, which I think is an absolutely brilliant idea, and I hope that there will be further support in keeping this going. Having the defibrillator nearby can and will save lives. I will fully support this petition. The heartbreak caused of losing a family member is severe, and to increase the chance of survival only a little, hopefully bring that number of 12 a week down. Thank you.
Councillor Gray, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to start by saying I cannot begin to imagine how it must feel to have lost a child in those circumstances. And Claire, I really do applaud your courage and your determination to make sure that nobody else has to go through that. It used to be that defibrillators were expensive and difficult to use properly, but I believe you can now buy one for about £1,000. It's good quality, and most people can operate it because it has step-by-step instructions, and there's plenty of training available which doesn't cost the earth. It's still not cheap, but it's not out of the question for schools, and indeed a number of schools up and down the country do have defibrillators already. And I am a governor at Forest, as I referred to earlier. They are currently looking at acquiring one. Earlier this month, sixth formers at the school were offered free electrocardiograms to try to pick up undiagnosed heart conditions. This was run by CRY, Cardiac Risk in the Young, the charity that Guy referred to. It was paid for through a trust set up by the family of Ben Birch, who was a former pupil at the school who died last year at the age of 29 of sudden arrhythmic death syndrome. So schools are not the only place where defibrillators might be a good idea. I'm a parish councillor, as is Rochelle, on Winnersh Parish Council, and our Recreation and Amenities Committee is also investigating the possibility of getting a defibrillator, because a lot of people attend public events and activities in our community halls and on our sports pitches, and it would make sense for us to have one. It isn't possible for this council, I don't believe, to make provision of a defibrillator mandatory in schools, because we don't have that much power. It'd be nice to have some power over schools sometimes, but we don't have that much power. But we can certainly encourage them, and we could look at how we could facilitate it, perhaps with a bulk buy deal or something of that nature. So on our side, we definitely support the intention of the petition, and if we get the opportunity at the end of the debate, we will propose that the council investigates the feasibility of getting defibrillators into schools and into other public buildings as well.
Thank you. Councillor Pauline Ellis.
I'm sure all of us extend our very genuine condolences to Lily May's family for what happened. And I think they're extremely brave to have taken the action that they have done. And hopefully some good will eventually result from it. I'm very happy to give my support to this petition. The statistics in the petition are absolutely staggering, and thank you for putting them in. Thankfully, defibrillators are becoming much more common, and more people are learning to use them. And I got an example from another public service, the Fire and Rescue Service. At the end of September of this year, in the fire service, all but one fire engine had a defibrillator in it, and it may well be all of them by now, the extra one may have it. And 387 people in the fire service have been trained to use them. And that's not just the firefighters, it's a lot of the non-uniformed staff as well. It's not difficult to do. I remember a couple of years ago, a man collapsed in Crowthorne High Street, and his life was saved by a firefighter who used a defibrillator that's stationed outside the fire station in Crowthorne. It was there, he had the training, he used it, and the man was saved. Simple, but it doesn't happen everywhere. But it does make full sense for schools to have them. They have EpiPens, they've had them for a long time, and they're very happy to use them, and they save lives as well. So why not defibrillators? They're not difficult to use. All the training, I hear, is funded, and the defibrillators do have instructions written on them. I understand that teachers may be worried about the consequences of using them, that if they do something wrong, they might actually do more damage. But they shouldn't worry about this, because I understand from the Chief Fire Officer himself that defibrillators are fail-safe, so you can't get something wrong with them. Unfortunately, as Councillor Bray said, we don't have the power as the local authority to force schools to take action. Probably take an Act of Parliament for that to happen. But we do have 4 MPs that serve the borough, and it might be worth the petitioners group taking further action in the future by petitioning, or at least speaking to those MPs as well, because one of them is a doctor and one of them is a cabinet member, so they have knowledge and influence. But back to Woking Borough, I certainly urge all of our senior officers, especially those that work with schools, to do all in their power to convince schools that they should have them there and that they should have people trained to use them. The training and the money are there to buy them. It's not a financial thing. It's explaining the importance and encouraging the willingness to do it. And I do urge our chief officers, please, to take that action. It's so vital. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor McCann, please.
Thank you. This is a perfect example where we can lead from the front and help our community. Prue's absolutely right about turning and saying we should push our influence into the parishes, into the towns. Some of us sit here this evening with 3 hats: borough councillors, town councillors and governors. We have influence directly into the organisations that could help not fix this problem, but certainly reduce the horror and devastation that these things actually happen, that these actions actually cause. I've got a friend whose wife collapsed in Reading with a 2-year-old daughter. If it hadn't been for the defibrillator, dead. But she was saved. And it's such an easy thing for us to do. It zips right into what we can do with our new responsibility of well-being. We make the decisions at this level. We instruct our officers to implement this council's policy to push this as a key priority within our organisation and the people who we have influence over. And then we take it out personally and we talk to our town councillors when we have our hat on, and we talk to the other governors when we're at the governors' meetings, and we say we support this type of action because it's good for our community and it saves lives and it's not expensive. Thank you very much, Chair.
Councillor Stanton, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this very important subject. In reading the proposal in the petition, and indeed the Lily May page, which I found informative but rather sad, which really does spell out the real and very sad event that became Lily and clearly her family. It is hard to understand how they must have felt that day, but it must have been awful, very sad. Those of us who are parents, albeit my own family are now bigger and richer than me, I still remember them as little ones, going to school, and me sitting outside the school gates waiting to take them home. So, we have been there. I've spent a lot of my time as a council member supporting children and schools, and I certainly can claim to have visited every school in this borough, including Willowbank, to know just how much teachers and staff protect the children in their care during every school day. To have experienced such a sad event at the school gate will be an event no school or teacher I know would ever have wanted to see, and those involved will never forget. I can say that as a retired chair of governors at a primary school for over 8 years, such an event would have been devastating for all involved, and we all understand the sadness. I did take some time to ask my local schools if they would support the addition of a defibrillator, and the clear answer is they would do so, and indeed welcome to the initiative. I must add here that training and installation and ongoing basis would be vital, but necessary, and it would certainly need to be managed carefully. Earlier speakers have indicated that we don't have the ability or the power to enforce a defibrillator in a school. But certainly talking to the schools I have, they'll be they will welcome it. Therefore, I am in total support of the sentiments of the petition. I support the view that we should encourage all schools to have this essential equipment in their first aid kit. And I believe we should give this the urgency it needs. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm totally supportive of the petition.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marquez.
Firstly, thank you, and I would like to echo the thoughts of all the other councillors here. I'd like to add a few facts to this. In Sonning, obviously I'm the Borough Councillor for Sonning, we have put a defibrillator actually in the phone box outside the Pearson Hall. Work was done by the Parish Council, but I helped with the Planning Commission, which had to come through Wokingham. Believe it or not, we had to get that. To put some facts and figures on it, the cost was about £1,500, which isn't a lot, plus a competent electrician to wire it in. We were very lucky that on Sonning Parish Council at the time, one of the people was a theatre nurse from the Royal Berkshire, so she was obviously aware of all the ins and outs of this. The two biggest concerns we had was one, that the device could be used inappropriately or accidentally or in the wrong circumstances. I'd like to assure the council that that's virtually impossible. There are safety locks, various systems in place. I won't go into them all, but you can't do it. Secondly, although you can take training, the training is free, you don't need it. In an emergency, you will be given advice over the phone how to use it,
and there are instructions. And obviously, if you've got a crisis in front of you, it's better to deal with it than sit there. But they are simple to use. Our second concern was the ongoing cost. Obviously, there's an initial fee to get the thing installed. Very, very little. They talk to the centre in some way. I think they use a phone line, so they're self-diagnosing there's something wrong with it. They charge themselves up. They use minimal amount of power. So in the main, it just sits there until the time it needs. The people that supply it bring a kit, the stickers, the documentation that you can hand round. The following, I have to hasten to add, I think it's a good thing to say in this case, it's never been used, but it's outside a public building. We are now looking to put a second one into the school, primary school in Sonning. As the other councillors said, it's not possible for us to enforce that, but if you go and talk to the head of the school, they are the manager, the boss of the site, and certainly the head is very, very comfortable with doing that, so we're now looking to put a second one in the school. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I would like to express my condolences to Claire Page for the tragic loss of her daughter, Lily May. Parents send their children to school with the expectation that they will return home at the end of the day. No one expects to lose a child, let alone this way. As the father of a daughter, I just can't imagine. The loss of life under this circumstance must also have a dreadful impact on teachers, fellow pupils, and the local community. I'd like to thank Claire for her petition and all those who signed it. I would also like to thank fellow members for their very clear support for these devices tonight. I have worked on this matter with officers in WBC in my capacity as Deputy Executive Member for Children's Services. Some of our own schools already have such automated versions of these devices, as has just been described online. They have provided these from their own funds, which are of course scarce. I have noticed from external meetings with other bodies that schools elsewhere in Berkshire are installing them widely. Some of our own parish and town councils, as you've heard, are also installing devices in places accessible to the public 24 hours a day. Some of which are in buildings next to schools. This is the case in my own parish, East Hampstead Parish, where we are about to install 2 of these, with councillors and many others about to receive training. As has been said, whilst under the Education Act 2008, WBC no longer controls schools and therefore cannot compel schools to install defibrillators, it can strongly recommend that they do so. Such devices located within schools would, however, only be available to those in the building within school hours. It could be that a community device approach taken between WBC, parish councils and schools would result in a higher and faster rate of implementation. No one solution will work in all cases. Each school and parish council needs to be involved in deciding a local solution. Inside the schools in some cases, on the outside of the schools in the others, and in an adjacent building where appropriate in others. Funds will be an issue, but I do see a number of potential funding streams. However, even if I had the immediate funds and the power to install these schools, which I do not, I would expect criticism from parish councils for not engaging them in discussions on the possibility of making as many of these as possible community devices. I see WBC being able to act as a central purchaser to ensure a bulk discount, so reducing the unit price. Whilst WBC cannot compel either schools or councils, it can and will act to encourage or even facilitate discussions to see what can be achieved, and preferably sooner rather than too late. WBC has recently completed a review, there's a summary of it here, of the need for defibrillators, which is in line with what I have said.
I'm sorry.
I do see us taking this forward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Claire Page and Rory Davis, you have listened to the councillors, and I was wondering if there is anything you would like to add?
If I may, Madam Mayor. Very interesting response, a great response, logical response. We were listening to the police earlier using social networking. We were on smartphones. We have been working with South Central Ambulance Service. They have got an app on the smartphone. If you're interested in looking at it, it's called an AED Locator UK. Open the app within a collapse or time of collapse, and automatically it picks up your GPS and it'll tell you exactly where your closest defibrillator is, which is again talking from the community side of things. If a school is open 9 months of the year, that is then open for access to the community by pushing one button on your phone, finding out that it's located, where it's located, and run down the road to Willowbank, for instance, and grab their defibrillator and run back to where you need it within the community. It's an excellent program that South Central have. So it's great to have some sort of awareness on that. Unfortunately, one last thing I just have to say is, seeing this in 20 years, how people purchase or fund defibrillators, it's always in hindsight, always, it's too late. Somebody's already died, identifying a need for a defibrillator. Let's get the defibrillators in foresight and work forward. And I think it's about educating everybody with regards to the importance of having one close to them, as we've heard from a number of you, actually, close to having someone resuscitated with a defibrillator. Utmost importance, and thank you very much. Thank you on behalf of Claire and myself. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have a proposal, please? Councillor Peter.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Given that local authorities no longer control schools, my motion to put before this council is: this council firmly believes that defibrillators should be strongly encouraged in all schools. This should be an essential piece of health and safety equipment fitted in all schools. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Do you have a second? Councillor Hellier. Right. Okay. We now need to vote on this proposal. Would you like me to read it out again? Or is it fine? It's okay. All right then. All those in favour, please. I think that is very clear that this is carried. Thank you very much. We are now moving on to Mayor's announcement. And I would like to draw your attention to the exhibition stands in the reception, which provide an overview of the work that was carried out to produce the Heritage Memorial Trail, which links all the war memorials in the borough and which was officially launched on Heritage Day. This is an excellent example of all the borough community, including towns, parishes and churches, coming together to honour the sacrifices of local people. I would like to thank everyone involved in the project for their efforts, particularly Jan Noweczki, who is the CEO of Wokingham Town Council, for coming up with the idea and coordinating the trail. I now call on Pauline Jørgensen, please, for agenda item 49.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move the item which you've got on your supplementary pages regarding the returning officers' report and changes to council's political balance. Firstly, to note that Alison Swan, who I would like to congratulate, has been elected as the ward member for Woolwich and Whitegate until May 2016. She had a very good result with a 10.28% increase in her share of the vote. So well done, Alison. Congratulations. Secondly, we've reviewed the representation of political groups, and there is one net change as a result of the change in the vote, which means that one seat on the Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee will move from the group of 3 to the Conservative group as a result of the change in the balance of power. So I'd like to move the recommendations 1 to 4 on the item number 49.
Do you have a second, please? Councillor Grandison, do you wish to speak?
No.
Okay. Does anybody else like to say anything? No? Then all those in favour, please? Anyone against? Any abstentions? One abstention? So this is carried. Agenda item 50, Councillor Baker, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You have in front of you, starting on page 22, is the new council plan 2014 to 2017. This is something that we have to do on a regular basis, and this is the first update. You'll see it's not several hundred pages long. This is the history of some of these documents. I think it is very readable. It captures the vision and our priorities and principles for delivery of services by the council. Excuse me. There is some measures and targets in there, as you would expect, which we will obviously be reviewing as we move through the years through to 2017. We anticipate to produce our first annual report in May to show the progress that we've made. So I propose that the recommendation the Council approves the Council plan for 2014 to 2017. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a second, please? Councillor Julian Maki-Sanya. Would you like to speak now?
I don't have much to add, Madam Mayor, other than I think Councillor Baker summed it up quite eloquently. I think it is a clear and concise report. I think the people of the borough will appreciate it being in a readable format, that we don't have to wait through for hours, and hopefully it will be well received. Thank you.
Does anybody else like to speak? Councillor McCann.
Thank you. I'm sure members are now, or should be now, aware that I'm particularly have a particular strong view about the council's. What's the echo? Where's that keep coming from? Nice and simple, then I'll get rid of that. I think it shouldn't just be this council's view, it should be this council's view and the rest of the towns and parish councils, that we should be part of a jigsaw of views which is a plans for our community. And I don't see that anywhere in here. On the Town and Parish Working Group, we talk about asking towns and parishes where they can pick up responsibilities, do things that they can do that help save us money, provide a better service. I don't see any of that. Perhaps the town plan should be the place where we should have a vision and a joint vision from which the whole of the borough can feel part of it and actually have an input in it. We seem to be making very slow progress at being able to do this. And I really would like is if next year or the year after we really start to think about not just what we want, but how do what the aspirations of our towns and parishes, how can we bring them into what we do better? Because I just don't see that here, and I think it's a missed opportunity, unfortunately. Thank you.
Anybody else like to say something? No? Okay then. All those in favour, please show.
Sorry, can I respond to the...
Of course you can, yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I refer you, Councillor McCann, to page 29. And I fully agree that towns and parish councils are key to our future and our residents' future. But on page 29, the bottom bullet of the first block, we will work closely with our town and parish councils. On the next block, the fourth bullet, we'll work with town and parishes about new developments. So it is in there. You can argue that maybe there isn't enough, but I do take your point. I think we have got the mechanisms through things like the Borough Parish Working Group and other sorts of groups like that that are developing to make sure that the point is round term. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favour, please show. Everyone against? Any abstentions?
Everybody didn't work.
3 abstentions. It is carried. Councillor Pauline Jorgensen, changes to the constitution, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to propose...
I do apologise, Councillor Mackie-Sumner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was beginning to wonder whether I'd offended you or not. Or whether there was something you'd like to tell me. On a more serious note, I'd like to recommend that we adopt this report from the Health and Wellbeing Strategy Group. This council has done a great deal of work with the Health and Wellbeing Board to implement a strategy to improve the health and well-being of the residents within the borough. I think the report is very well written. I think it covers a number of key points, but I'm happy to answer any questions should anyone have any. Thank you.
Do you have a second there?
Bob? Eventually.
Would you like to speak now or later?
No,
Does anybody else like to say something? Okay, hang on. Hands up. Okay, Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Keith referred to the council plan as being quite short. The health and wellbeing strategy is also relatively short, but I particularly would recommend you page 38 of the agenda, on which you will see the entire health and wellbeing strategy condensed onto a single page, which is quite a remarkable feat. This is the second year of having a strategy in the second year of the Health and Wellbeing Board. And on page 39 you can see some of the learning from the first year of operation. And I think it is lessons well learned. I think it has to be clear who is responsible for what. Progress does have to be measurable, and someone does actually have to check what's happening. I think that's not just true of the Health and Wellbeing Board, it's true of all the bodies that we have. I am a member of the Health and Wellbeing Board that produced the strategy, and while it's not absolutely 100% ideally perfect, it's definitely going in the right direction, and I would commend it to you.
Thank you. Councillor Ross, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this is a very timely update of this document. I just want to bring out one point, if I might. As this whole process of public health coming into the council has progressed, there's been increasing evidence inside this council and nationally of the benefits of exercise. And I'm delighted to see on page 39 the details of some of the work that's been achieved by this council. This is exercise for everybody. Disadvantaged groups obviously are very important. Children, and we know the problems with obesity linked to lack of exercise as well as diet. But also for older people, for those with mental conditions, to get them out and back into the community. And there's a list in Appendix 1 on page 51 of these activities. So I do applaud the work that's been done within the council for that. My only regret is that in the very concise page that Prue has referred to on page 38, this is not brought out, but I'm sure that can be repaired in time. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Harris, please.
So I know how you felt, but I was back the same 2 weeks ago, so I had some strepsils. I'll give you one. Good evening. I'd like to refer to page 48 which covers the mental health side of things, there's quite an extensive discussion of dealing with the children's side of things. But one area that I've had some personal contact with over the last few months is adult services, and it was interesting that the Chief Constable touched on it, and in particular the emergency service available when there could very well be problems with somebody's medicine and not being able to deal with that. And I feel that is an area that seems to be missing in here, and I would like the Health and Wellbeing Board to take this issue up, because there were only very, very few people. I think there was only one person on cover for the whole of this area, and I'm talking about Berkshire. And I think that's something that really does need to be looked at. And I think it's an area that's often forgotten, but someone has suffered quite badly as a result of what I feel is poor service from the emergency service. And I think we should need to look at that. Thank you.
Councillor Mackin.
Thank you. I read the document. It was quite interesting reading. I did actually attend the Health and Wellbeing open afternoons, early evenings, and the information provided on ward breakdown of statistics was fascinating and very informative. As somebody who's worked within this community for over 20 years, I learnt a lot just about Woodley by reading those 4 wards banks of information. But unfortunately there wasn't really a great pickup or engagement from the communities that we went out with. Perhaps that's because it's a new responsibility. Perhaps we've got more work to do within our communities to help them understand what our new services are. Perhaps we're still learning really about how we should be delivering these things. I would like to have seen a little bit more vision, a little bit more engagement with our communities, and instead of just saying we're interested in engaging people with keeping them fitter, keeping them healthier, that we do active things to promote that, like not shutting Hurst Golf Club at 5 minutes notice. Thank you.
Councillor Wyatt, would you like